Hey, AS10, let's go over the annotations for the first chapter, or for the first paragraph of the first chapter. So the first sentence, Okonkwo is well known throughout the 9 villages and even beyond. Okay, so this idea of, we know that there are 9 villages and even beyond. So this is a vast area that they're talking about. His fame rested on solid personal achievements. So he's not only famous, but he has solid personal achievements. So who are we talking about here? His and Okonkwo. So this guy, Okonkwo, is really the focus then of this paragraph. As a young man of 18, he had brought honor to his village by throwing Amelins the cat. So there's a couple of things here. He had brought honor to his village. So the idea that one is important to the village is important here, like the connection to the village is kind of important. And then also the idea of honor. So honor is important. Like that's a big deal to this culture because they say it right here at the beginning, and he brought honor to his village. Well, if the whole village values honor or that's a comment to be made, we know that that's important. The idea of throwing Amelins the cat. Well, this is kind of curious to me because Okonkwo is just Okonkwo, but Amelins is a cat. And so I'm kind of wondering is what does this tell us about Amelins? So when I think about this character, a cat is 9 lives, right? Land on the feet. They're swift. They're finicky. They're smart. What else? They're agile. Okay, so all of these things must be true about this character because he is the cat. And so you want to think about when you're given little names that include a description, that description is going to be important. And so what are we learning about Amelins? Well, I'm going to tell you, this is like the only place we hear about this character. There's maybe one reference a little bit later when they're talking about wrestling again. So the reason why this character exists is to tell us about this character, right? And so what do we learn about Okonkwo? Through the description of Amelins the cat. Okay. And so those are some things that I think about. Well, I learned that if he can beat this guy who's swift and smart and finicky and agile, who can land on his feet, right, who never lands on his back, then I must know more about Okonkwo and his wrestling ability, that he must be pretty good. For 7 years was unbeaten. And we know that we see that 7 days and 7 nights. So the number 7 is a pattern. I don't know if that's important or not, but I just noticed that 7 seems to be brought up quite a bit. Unbeaten for 7 years, which is a long time. If you think about 7 years, think about 7 years ago, how different were you? So the fact that he was unbeaten for 7 years is quite a long time. From this village to that village. So that's Umofia and Mbanio. So this is part of the vastness of the territory. He was called the cat because his back would never touch the earth. So this again adds to this characterization. It was this man that Okonkwo threw in a fight, which the old men agree was one of the fiercest since the founder of their town engaged in the spirit of the wild. So what we know here is that the town, what does the town value? We know that the village is, important, right? Because he brought honor to it. So what is the village value? Well, let's think about what we see here. We know that he has solid personal achievements. So achievement is important. We're not exactly sure how that's defined, but we know that somebody needs to be successful, that honor is important. We know that wrestling, and let's think about wrestlers, they're strong, right? So strength is important. And this seems very masculine to me. So the being masculine is valued in this particular, at least this particular section. The old men agreed. So, we have like this value of like our elders is important there. And then when we go down here, we're engaged in the spirit of the wild. So there's like this, there's a spiritualism. But we don't know what religion it is. We don't know anything about that. We just know that like the spirit of the wild, we know that there's some element of that. So this is a bunch that we learn here in this first paragraph. We learn all of these things about this village. And we think about what we see in Okonkwo. What do we learn about him? We learn that he's strong. We learn that he is successful. We learn that he is honorable, right? And this is so successful, honorable, strong, that he threw in a fight, in a very fierce fight. So we know these things about Okonkwo. So if we know that these are the values of the village, and this is Okonkwo, what do we know about Okonkwo's status in the village? Well, he must have a high status, right? Sorry. So we know all of these things because the way he's described in this chapter or in this paragraph also helps to reinforce the things we were learning about the village. Okay. So this is one paragraph. And when we're reading things, I don't expect that you necessarily, when you just read it, to like be able to articulate all of those things. Those should be understandings you get as a gist. These aren't things that I expect you to get just by reading it. These are the things that I expect you to get after we pay attention to words, where they're placed, how they're connected to other words within the same text, how we talk about, different details that are put in. So through this unit, we're going to be looking at the words the author uses. Okay, so this is called diction. We are going to be looking at the details the author gives us. And then we're going to be looking at really how these two things build to develop a meaning. All right, so that is what we are going to be looking for. So as you are annotating, I do expect that you jot down some ideas as you go through the book. The more ideas that you kind of keep track of, the better you are as far as understanding the text. I think I don't have especially in this situation, I don't have an expectation of exactly how many you will do per page or whatever, but I typically try to make sure that within each page, when I'm annotating something that I'm learning about, not something I'm reading for fun, but this is something I'm studying. So when I annotate this, I'll annotate at least something each page. Usually I have stuff per paragraph, but I'm kind of working at a little bit different level maybe than you are. I would say that students who do really well do have a lot of annotations and sticky notes throughout the book, but I want you to pay attention and find a focus. I've asked you to look for culture, right? And how do we learn about their culture through this? Because that's what our unit is focused on. So when we look here at culture, we can see Okonkwo's strengths and the village's values. So that's where I want you to really spend your time is how do you understand, how does Achebe relay the elements of culture? So if you think back to those elements, of culture that we have within the text, how does he do this? And we're looking at like the values of the culture. We're looking at the government. We're looking at religion. We're looking at family structures. Like there's I gave you a list of 7 or 9 depending on your thing. So you want to look at these in general. Those are the kinds of things that you kind of want to think about overall as you're looking, because you can't annotate for everything. And so if you focus on how you're learning about the culture, then that will help you kind of have a direction to head as you go through. I hope this helped. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, and I will try to do my best to get more things to you. Take care.